What's up guys, my name is Sean from White Jade Productions, and today I just had to bring up a topic that honestly needs to be talked about on YouTube and isn't talked about enough, and for probably some pretty good reasons, but I'm gonna talk about it anyways. First and foremost, there isn't a single brand of camera or camera gear supplying or accessories that are there for you. These companies are here to make money, and while some of them might also want to tag along good intentions beside it, making money and growing a business is their first priority, honestly, as it should be. Most of us own businesses and we get it. Of course, those who own smaller businesses do tend to be a little more kind, and there are camera brands that are nicer and better and more responsive to their customers than others. However, it's getting a lot worse. If you haven't been paying attention to the camera news lately, Sony just unveiled a lot of firmware for their cameras, and if you update it, it basically cuts all access to third-party batteries. Whether you're trying to run V-mount extensions or put an actual battery or dummy battery into your camera, there will be a warning signal that pops up and basically tells you, hey, you can't do that, or don't do that. Bad things might happen, and bad things certainly will happen. People's cameras have been just breaking because Sony isn't allowing it to happen. By the way, all batteries go under universal battery safety standards, which is why every camera brand allows you to use third-party batteries up until now. This is an intentional move on Sony's part to remove your access to third-party batteries so that you spend $80+ on their own proprietary batteries. I personally don't think that Sony understands how much the market is shifting. Sony's a huge company. They do a lot more than cameras, and unfortunately, that has caused some short-sightedness and is causing a lot of people to leave the Sony brand. I get that they have been the forefront of technology for a very long time, but that is kind of starting to change these days. Lumix, Blackmagic, Red, Nikon, who was never a video brand up until recently, is now doing more than Sony ever has with their cameras, and Sony is just doubling down on its users, making life more expensive and harder for them. But I want to be very clear, this isn't a Sony hate video. I think Sony is doing something that is absolutely horrible to their users, which is why I'm pointing it out. And it's not the first time it's happened, but I'm doing this video to say that other brands are not for you. I know that a lot of people think that Lumix is the brand that is for the consumer. They are not. I promise you that Lumix is not the brand that is all for you. Despite me currently shooting this on a Lumix camera and me being an avid Lumix supporter, they're just not for you. They're giving you extra features so that you hop onto their brand. And they'll probably continue to do that. They've had a pretty good track record. Their customer support is absolutely amazing. At the same time, if push comes to shove, they're gonna choose profits over the customers like every other brand. My one exception to this would probably be Blackmagic. Grant Petty has made it incredibly clear that he wants cheap, good quality cameras, gear, and accessories for their customers. Now, it's still business driven. They're doing this to push their way to the top of the cinema industry. They saw that, you know what, Red's kind of lost their foothold, and while Red is climbing back up and Sony kind of lost their foothold, but now Sony's kind of climbing back up in the cinema space, he saw a little pocket there for a while, and that pocket's filling up, and Blackmagic is taking that space back. They're using it for them. They're creating cameras that are incredibly powerful, incredibly cheap, and incredibly versatile and designed for filmmaking first. I think that Blackmagic is probably one of the best companies out there. They have some of the best customer support. They have some of the best just deals on cameras, but that doesn't mean that they might not screw over their customers in the future too. I think that currently, every other company is learning a lesson from Sony. Sony put out an update a couple years ago that basically bricked A7S IIIs, FX3s, and some FX6s, although this was a predominant problem in the FX3. Basically, you updated your camera, you tried to use it, your camera broke, you sent it into Sony, and they charged you over $700 for a repair. In my opinion, they just didn't fully flesh out the firmware. I don't think this was an intentional money-making move by Sony, but given their track record and what they're currently doing with their cameras, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case either. Brands like Canon are not without fault either. Canon is actually kind of known for not playing nice with others. They just recently opened the RF mount up to third parties, and it's still kind of tricky for third parties to get the access that even Sony has allowed for third-party lenses within their brand. Canon has kind of sucked when it comes to playing with others, and that comes at the expense of the user. You're forced to buy their lenses, and other lenses aren't quite as good, and they probably won't be for some time unless you're buying Sigma, of course. Red for a long time didn't play nice with others either. While their customer support, in my opinion, has been absolutely phenomenal whenever I've had issues, they've definitely been on the pricier side, and they don't budge. They just make something and you either buy it or you don't. They don't care, which I'd rather have that no care than intentional bricking and destroying and lack of thought and processing into their cameras. They at least make good cameras that don't have issues and allow you to have full functionality, and I at least do appreciate that. Even brands like ARRI are not without fault. ARRI cameras do not have to be nearly as expensive as they are. They realized they created something really good. They created a reputable brand. ARRI cameras don't break. They just last forever. And when something lasts forever, it gets expensive. Why? Because it's worth more than other brands, although it doesn't have to cost that much. The Alexa Mini LF could probably cost half of what it currently does, and they would still make quite a bit of money, if not potentially a little bit more from the lower end market. But that being said, all brands care about their business first. Now, I'm making this video because of this Sony battery issue. It just needed to be made. I haven't seen anybody else really talk about this on YouTube, so I figured I would. A reason a lot of people don't talk about this is because it requires me to kind of go after other brands and go, hey, you have an issue, you have an issue, you have an issue, you have an issue, fix it. And it requires me to kind of be a little aggressive towards these brands. And that in turn might not create phenomenal brand response towards me, but at the end of the day, I care about telling you guys what I think. I just want to say my opinion. If there's something objectively truthful that needs to be said, I want to say it. I don't want to be restricted by my fear of whether or not a brand may or may not collaborate with me. Right before I end this video, I do want to say that this does not stop at camera manufacturers. This absolutely bleeds over into lens manufacturers, and more importantly, and I will create a whole nother video about this, and I've been meaning to for probably like a year, brands like SmallRig. SmallRig in particular. I own a lot of SmallRig stuff. I have 4 SmallRig things attached to my setup right now, but they break. They're cheap. You buy a $20 handle, it's gonna break at some point. At least it's gonna get weak. I don't trust it. I've broken 2 SmallRig handles, 1 Sirui handle, and now I've just upgraded to this Nikor handle just because it feels very similar to the bright tangerine handles, and I really like the wooden handles. Those handles are like $250 to $400 for just the master handle. You want to get the whole extension set, it's going to be $1,000. If that isn't price gouging at its finest, I don't know what is. But at the same time, when I get a rig and we're renting bright tangerine, I certainly don't complain. It's some of the best stuff in the game, and again, it doesn't break. But on the flip side of that, you have brands like SmallRig who create really cheap stuff, really accessible stuff, stuff that feels comfortable, but breaks. It bends. It's not of high quality, and I don't trust it on a professional set. If I'm holding a camera rig that weighs more than 5 pounds, I get a little nervous when I'm using SmallRig handles, extensions, and any kind of cage or adapter. I'm just not very comfortable with it. Not to mention that a lot of these cheaper brands do not have universal attachments and compliance with everything else, unlike brands like Wooden Camera, Mid-49, and Bright Tangerine. Unfortunately, we do live in a time where there's a lot of cheap options, there's a lot of expensive options, and there's not always stuff in the middle. Luckily, brands like Blackmagic and Lumix are trying to fix that within the camera space, within the camera accessory space. There's not really a lot for that right now. There are some brands, but they're growing and they're not quite there yet. Anywho, this is the end of my rant. If you like truthful camera related content with no bias towards the camera brands, like and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. I'm brutally honest in all of my reviews, and that's just of my own opinion. If I really like something, I'm gonna gloat on it a little bit. But if I don't, I'm definitely not gonna hold back either. So subscribe if you like that. Until next time.